We're here on a topic that I know probably everybody has got a lot of questions about because it's such a dramatic change taking place in the video distribution space from the analog matrix switching market that's been so dominant for you guys for such a long time to this dramatic shift that's taking place with AV over IP. And of course, with a dramatic shift comes a lot of questions. You know, what are the right systems? What are the differences between the systems? What kind of training do I need? How do I install these systems? So we're going to try and answer those questions today in our conversation of how to design the best AV over IP ecosystem. So my name is Jason Knott. I am the editor of CE Pro, and I am honored to be sitting here with a panel of experts who are going to hopefully answer a lot of your questions and also give you a little bit of information about what their background is and what they've been doing in the space. Speaking of questions, we do want to hear from you. So we have a microphone that's going to be passed around. We're going to leave some time for questions. So please wait for the mic because otherwise your question won't be picked up. But we do want to answer your questions. So we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So let me jump right into it and have the panel introduce themselves. Let me start with you, Justin Kenington, President of SDVOE.
Thanks, Jason. That's right. My day job is as Director of Product for a company called Semtech Aptovision. We are a founding member of the SDVOE Alliance and work on the technology at the very core of SDVOE. And then I also serve, as Jason mentioned, as President of the SDVOE Alliance.
Great, thank you. Next, Laurent Masia.
Hey,
Laurent,
thanks,
tell
Jason.
us about yourself.
I'm Laurent Masia. Hi, everyone. I'm the Senior Product Line Manager for Managed Switches at Netgear, a global networking company. Netgear is a founding member of the SDVOE Alliance and is really committed to the SDVOE standard platform and ecosystem.
All right, welcome, Laurent. Tim Locascio from Savant. Tim, tell us about yourself.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning still. I'm Tim Locascio. I'm the Vice President of Engineering at Savant. I've been with Savant about 10 years. Before that, I was with Lucent in the telecom industry, where we went through a similar change of going from large centralized switches to distributed gateways and using what's called a soft switch. So I've been through this transition once before, and it's exciting to see it happen again.
Welcome, Tim. Last but not least, Matt Levin, Metro 18. Matt, tell us about yourself.
Thanks. I'm Matt Lavin from Metro 18. We're an AV integration firm based in San Francisco. And we've been utilizing the AV over IP technology in partnership with Savant since the early beta process. And at this point, we're really happy with it and happy to discuss it.
Great. He's one of you. So he's already rubber meets the road out there in the field. So hopefully, some good insight from Matt. We're going to start out. Justin's got, I mentioned the question of how are the systems different? Which one do you decide? Now there's all these AV over IP systems. What are the differences? So Justin's got a few slides he's going to run through before we jump into the Q&A. So I'm going to turn the click over to Justin.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, my purpose here is simply to orient you guys, introduce you a little bit to SDVOE as a concept and as an alliance. So the purpose of the SDVOE Alliance is to help standardize on Ethernet as the transport technology for moving audio, video, and control signals around, and to displace the matrix switch. If you think about it, that's actually a really big statement, right? We've been using the matrix switch to move video around since television was invented, right? So 75 years, this is how it's done. And what we're talking about here is a change to that, right? This is a major revolution. So the Alliance is going to do that through education. We've grown this thing to 40 members now since our launch at ISE 2017, so that's about 18 months ago. We've grown from a group of 6 founding members with a very strong belief that Ethernet is the technology to displace the matrix switch, and that SDVOE is the standard way to do that. And since then, we've grown to these 40 members, including Savant, who have figured out how to take advantage of this. So SDVOE technology itself is a platform and a chipset that work together to give you a way to deliver quality that's very simple. What I mean is all of the hardware devices in the SDVoE ecosystem work together. That might be encoder and decoder endpoints, but it also means switches from Netgear. It means infrastructure from some of our members that deliver cable solutions. And then it means a common software layer, an API, that creates an interface to the control layer, which we'll get into a little more when we talk about what Savant's done with it, that presents all of that low-level complexity as a very simple, single programmable interface. So what that means is a company like Savant, whose focus is on user experience and creating that, can really simply and easily build that experience through software on top of this programmable platform. And platform sort of is the key word here, right? Platform is where we're headed. If you think through the evolution of any sort of communication technology, there's a standard set of steps that they all go through. Tim mentioned his experience in the telephone business as they transition to IP. Technology starts as some sort of analog signal, right? That's the simplest way to do it. In the telephone example, that was people with tiny fingers, like literally plugging in wires from here to there so that my house connects to Jason's house and we could have a talk on the telephone. Over time, the technology to digitize that comes along and we get better clarity, better fidelity, better performance. Eventually, that technology moves away from digital matrix switches into IP. That's the transition Tim was talking about in the telephone world. And that's sort of where we are today in AV as we transition from the matrix to the IP network. But the next transition is away from a sort of specific product focus and into a platform focus, right? And again, if we look at the communications and telephone industry, you see where we are today. The real battle in the telephone market is about the software platform, right? Are you an Android guy or are you an iPhone guy? Right? That's all about which software platform do you prefer because it delivers the applications that you're interested in. Right? So bringing that all around, that's what SDVoE is here to do, is to create a software platform that allows folks to build applications that help the end users drive their business, drive their home, or whatever it is they want to accomplish. I mentioned that a key tenet for the SDVoE Alliance is education. So I actually want to sort of pre-announced to this crowd today. This actually hasn't been publicly announced, that the SDVoE Alliance is launching what we call SDVoE Academy. So next week it's going to be a soft launch to our certified design partners. The design partner program is something that any of you can come to sdvoe.org and check out. It's about an hour's worth of training focused on an audience who's been designing with matrix switches for all these years and teaching them the new considerations they need to have for how to build matrix switch performance systems out of an IP system like SDVoE. So come to the Design Partner Program, sign up, and then next week that's going to get you early access to our SDVoE Academy, which we're going to build out as a complete online training platform to teach everything you need to know about how to install IP networks, how to deal with AV over IP endpoints, how to sell this technology and capabilities to your customers. We really are making this a one-stop shop for all of your AV over IP education needs. So with that, I think it's time to hand it over to Jason to drive a broader discussion.
Great. I think you just answered the question that I kind of posed at the beginning of how do you get training on this, so congratulations on that. And then just to back up for everybody, can you just let everybody know what SDVoE actually stands for, acronym?
I skipped that bit, didn't I? SDVoE is the Software-Defined Video over Ethernet Alliance, right? And that's about that software platform that I talked about, because more and more, the software is what's interesting because the software is what creates the application, right? At the end of the day, the customer, whether it's at home, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's in the house of worship or the military, the person using the system doesn't care about the technology underneath, right? They care about how easy is it to use, is it doing what I need, and does that picture on the screen look good, right? And so SDVoE is about making it easy to develop those applications that serve any market's needs, whether that's the home, the business, or anywhere else.
All right, Laurent, first question to you. How do AV over IP systems, especially ones that are SDVoE, compare to conventional matrix solutions?
Oh, thank you, Justin. That's a great question. So the previous circuit-based switching solutions, like this proprietary HD-based typical metric switcher, they are dying because of cost and scale and complexity reasons. So typically AV convergence to IP in general, that streamlines audiovisual designs and simplify AV systems, making them more cost-effective, simpler, and more scalable. But typically, SDVoE technology, this platform, this ecosystem, really is the replacement for the old matrix switcher because it delivers true 4K quality with a sub-millisecond latency and flawless image quality. So that's really what makes SDVoE technology unique, and it's leveraging something fantastic for us, networking vendors, 10 gigabit Ethernet. So 10 gigabit Ethernet is really the underlying layer 1, 2, 3, and 4 layers that will allow that flawless 4K quality with, again, a less than a millisecond of latency, virtually 0 frame latency.
So improvements from latency, quality, physical space, cost, scalability and flexibility, compression, improvements there from a standpoint for compressing the signal. Sounds like kind of all of the above.
This is absolutely correct. And maybe we can spend just 20 seconds on the scale, and how Ethernet is more scalable than a fixed, closed 8x8 or 16x16 or 24x24 solution. Ethernet is expandable by nature. And AV over IP systems and SDVoE technology in particular really make it more compact and way more scalable.
All right, Tim, question for you. One of the things I hear is regarding the size of the network. So give us an example, or give us one of the benefits between a 10 gigabit solution and a 1 gigabit solution.
Well, I think the first thing when we decided that we wanted to do our next generation switching platform, and we looked at again a large centralized matrix switcher over IP, having the experience through the telecom world and seeing the flexibility, as Laurent just said, of the design of going over IP first. That was the first choice. We decided we wanted over IP. It brings you the flexibility. The technology was there today. Then we started looking at the technologies. We looked at the 1 gigabit technologies. We looked at the 10 gigabit technologies. We looked at, do we do something on our own? We settled on the SDVoE Alliance because it brought the highest quality of the signal, basically. And that's where Savant is a high brand in the residential market, that we want a very high, reliable, good quality video to the end user. As Laurent said, it's about the user experience. It's not about the technology underneath, but the technology underneath has to deliver a good user experience. So we chose to work with the SDVoE Alliance. They have a great platform. It brought us to market quickly, and with a great, reliable solution. And we've been selling our solution for almost about a year now already in the market. It's been well received. Matt can talk about some of the jobs he's been doing with it already. But it's really about to get back to the question, it's about the quality of the video signal and the ease of installation. You don't need to set up VPNs and all this stuff on your network. It's a very easy installation, and it's the quality is, you can just do the math. I mean, it's about 13 gigabits to do gigabits to do a 4K 60 444 signal. So compress that to a 1 gigabit solution. It's 14-to-1 compression. It's simple math. You're going to lose. You're going to get compression noises, and you're going to lose quality in the signal.
For the end user, is there significant cost difference between having a 10 gigabit solution brought into, let's say, in the commercial market in particular? Are commercial customers sensitive about paying for a bigger network, or is that really not an issue out there?
I think the biggest thing is not really cost. It's more just it's mindset, is understanding this and that trust, that leap of faith of going into a whole new technology. The costs are actually, in the long run, probably drop down even with the 10 gigabit solutions because of the flexibility of I don't need an 8x8 and not use a couple of the ports that I'm not paying for. I really just pay for what I'm going to be using. So if I want a 9 by 23, I'm not getting a 32 by 32 port switch. I'm getting 9 input ports and 23 output ports. So the cost is really drops that way because of the flexibility of the design.
Right.
I think it's worth noting there's a misconception out there. It's based on some truth, but it's sort of wrong-headed. People will worry and complain, oh, 10 gig is more expensive. And you know what? From Laurent's perspective, I'm going to be honest, it is more expensive, right? A 10 gig switch is going to cost you more dollars than the same size 1 gig switch. Fair enough. But what we have to understand is that the cost of an AV system is dominated by the endpoint devices, right? Let's say you have a 48-port Ethernet switch. That might be $1,000 for 1 gig, maybe $4,000 for 10 gig. But apparently, you're going to plug 48 endpoints into it. Those are $1,000 or $2,000 each. So now you're spending $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 on endpoints. Let's not worry so much about the 1,000 versus 4,000 for the switch, right? And in fact, very often we find that the 1 gig endpoints can cost more than the 10 gig endpoints because the best of the 1 gig endpoints have to have very expensive compression algorithms in them to get some kind of okay performance, right? And so somebody has to get paid there, right? There are vendors that sell these specialty compression IPs. If Savant wanted to use that, they've got to go pay them, and now the integrator and the end customer has to pay that bill too, right? So your choice is sort of pay for a very expensive codec or get real garbage when you have a bad 14:1 compression.
All right, Matt, you're out in the field. Tell us what your experience has been with migrating your customers from the analog to AV over IP.
Well, I think for the end users, I think the change has been somewhat invisible, and I think our concern was that wouldn't be the case, that there would be some period of time where bugs were shaking out, and it's been very seamless to deploy these systems, and the performance is really great. It's been very high quality performance for video, and extreme reliability and fast switching, very fast switching.
That was one of my follow-up questions, was comparative of the image quality that you see when you're out there for what you were doing with the analog matrix switch, for what you're doing with AV over IP. Improved quality, better quality, the same, no difference? What is your
Well, it's inherently improved quality because it's capable of passing signals that weren't able to be passed easily with prior generation systems.
All right, Laurent. An integrator is just starting out. Maybe some of the guys in the audience or some of the people out there on Facebook, Facebook land, are just starting out. What should they do? How do they get started? What sort of experience and training do they need?
Well, I would say 3 or 4 things. First, get to the sdvoe.org website and sign up for the Design Partner Program, okay? Because that's the very first step in order to understand how to leverage the flexibility of Ethernet to transport 4K video using AV over IP and SDVoE technology. So that's the first step. Maybe second, because you will have signed up, you will receive this early notification over the weekend for the brand new training academy. So this SDVoE Academy is getting live, and that will be, the next big point for training, because we really want to explain everything about multicast, about Ethernet in general, and AV over IP in particular. But next, obviously, this integrator will have to, select one of the SDVoE AV vendors to start with and test this technology. And last but not the least, the fourth thing would be to select a good switching engine. And because the network backend is very important to move those packets. And luckily, we, as a founding member of this alliance at Netgear, we designed a line of switches called the 4300s that are exceptionally good at that, with pre-configured multicast Ethernet to let that SDVoE technology go touchless. So that's probably the best things to do.
All right, Matt, picking up on that, how did you guys get started? Did you have to hire an IT specialist? Did you have the training in-house? How did you guys get engaged and get comfortable with the technology?
Good question. So yeah, certainly we were anxious about having to raise our game, with sophistication on the networking side, and working with Savant's products. Even in the beta process, their documentation was very thorough. So I mean, if you're capable of following directions from within deployment guide information, it's fairly easy to configure. And at this stage, Savant has automatic configuration as part of their RacePoint Blueprint software. So the complexity around configuring the 10 gig networking is very minimal, at least with our experience with Savant solution. In terms of the overall network, for us, we view it as it's kind of its own standalone network, separate from the rest of the house switching. I mean, it really is. The AV is over here operating on AVB for the audio switching, and the 10 gig network for the video switching. And part of the interconnection with the network really does create there is no path between going backwards to the 10 gig network, which is desirable. You don't want anything interfering with that. So the short answer would be in terms of the raised complexity on the networking, it has not been appreciably different.
With your customer base, do they care? Do you have to explain, or they just want it to work? I'm thinking ultimately, but do you have to explain? Let's just say, especially if you're running into a competitive situation where somebody else is bringing an analog solution to the table.
Well, we haven't had too many situations like the last example where we're really having to explain it from the standpoint of competing with a different solution. So one of the value propositions we try to make to customers is that we are network specialists, and we've been saying that for a number of years now. And so really for us, this AV switching solution really dovetails into what we've already been saying, which is that you really need to be hiring somebody who has a lot of sophistication with networking. So when we start saying, we're running fiber, we're using 10 gig networking, it's top of the line in AV video switching, there's a lot of nodding, and that sounds great. But ultimately they want it to work, to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot of explanation necessarily. They don't really understand. Most customers are not going to understand the technology, so it's not necessarily where you have to have a level of understanding where you need to have a marketing element to your conversation with the customer.
I think just describing it in a really basic way sounds very impressive and technical to most clients. So I think it just the description of it is a selling point.
All right, Tim, a lot of buzz over the past few years regarding transmission methodologies, copper versus fiber. Does that make a difference in the AV over IP world?
It does. I think there's different for copper. There's different lengths you can go based upon what Cat 5e, Cat 6a, Cat 6e, Cat 6, Cat 7. So you have different lengths over the different copper. Copper also uses a little bit more power to generate on both the transmit and the receive boxes. So fiber has lots of advantages. The only disadvantage is fiber's done a lot of retrofit homes. So if I were an integrator or I was a person buying a home and I could choose between copper and fiber, I'd want fiber laid into my home. And but we support both. We support copper. We support fiber. But I would definitely get on the fiber bandwagon because you have 8K TVs coming. You have all these other, more bits. HDMI 2.1 increases, so it's just going to go higher and higher and higher. You have 40 gigabit lengths now. It'll be 40 gigabit switches in 2 years. That'll be pretty common. So, to future-proof your home, the new home, I would definitely recommend fiber.
What, if I could, on that question, copper legacy projects and retrofit opportunities was something I was really concerned about, where we wouldn't have an opportunity to run fiber, and how do we make this work with existing copper infrastructure? And we've done multiple retrofit projects with legacy Cat 5e, even down to Cat 5e with wire links in that 100-foot or less range, and the products have worked seamlessly. So we haven't had issues. I was very concerned about that would, the burden on the network transmission was going to lead to video loss ultimately, but that hasn't been the case.
All right, there are a lot of different AV over IP solutions out there. Justin explained the SDVoE network to us. Tim, let me talk to you as a partner in the SDVoE network. How has Savant applied that software-defined concept to its hardware?
Well, it goes to the nature of what Savant does. Savant is, we sell hardware, but we're really a software company. If you look at the number of engineers I have inside of Savant, or we have inside of Savant, it's definitely software. We're a software company building that user experience. We build hardware to make that user experience better. So the software APIs and everything that allow some of the user experiences like tiling and video wall and the other features that we didn't even get into here that come with the SDVoE as the SDVoE package really, really helps that user experience and helps sell a better solution for the customer. Basically with the video processing receivers, you can have a tiling on every single TV that you want in your home. Is that practical? Well, in my house, there's a lot of sports people watching, so we're using the tiling and watching the sport, 4 different games at once, and it's fun. It makes it fun again. Usually, TV, my son, he watches everything on his computer, and when he got it in the tiling, now he's actually back to the TV again. So it's all about that user experience, and so the SDVoE allows that solution, and then with the Savant's user interface on top of that, it gives a great user experience.
Great. Laurent, you mentioned the zero latency elements or aspects to AV over IP. Can you dig in a little bit more for us and tell us specifically, what about a scenario where you might have multiple switches in a location? Is there still zero latency? What happens?
Oh yeah, let me tell you that straight. It doesn't matter at all, right? Because what is important for this industry is the latency that we can measure in milliseconds, right? Because a video frame, this is milliseconds. But in the Netgear world, in the networking world, latency gets measured in microseconds. So 1,000th of a millisecond. So to make it very simple today, each hop from one port to another switch to another port will bring in between 1 and 2 microseconds. So this is totally irrelevant from an AV standpoint, because at the end of the day, even if we had, 100 switches out there, we would still be largely under the millisecond value proposition for this technology.
Phil, have you run into situations where that might be for gamers? Matt, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say Phil. Have you run into that with gaming households where latency is something they're asking about?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Traditionally, with prior kind of matrix switch solutions, we would actually do it differently for local game consoles. Rather than long hauling them back to a switch to come back to the TV as part of the distribution, we would go HDMI direct to TV and backfeed audio to reduce latency. Because for people that are really serious about gaming, that matters, as I've learned. And the specs at least satisfy the demands around latency for gaming. So we've started deploying those with local boxes that backhaul the signal onto the 10 gig network.
Yeah, I think it's an important point to consider the gaming. I know a lot of integrators don't install the gaming systems, but this backbone element with households now where so much is about gaming, this speed and this zero latency is really an important element versus what an analog system can bring from a gaming standpoint, especially in a competitive gaming environment. So, well, hopefully you learned a little bit, and if you had any reticence about going whole hog with AV over IP, now you know where you can get some training. You know about this organization that's got a lot of partnerships, manufacturers who are supporting it, and thanks so much for Matt for giving us what somebody who's out in the field actually experiencing it. If I could get a round of applause for everybody on the panel, thank you very much.
Thank you.